Yo, what's up, family? Before we start the video, please leave a like, subscribe, and share to any and everyone that you can, just so we can get out there a little bit more. With that being said, let's get right into the video. The Boston Celtics have just had one of their most eventful off seasons in franchise history, and barring any unforeseen moves, the roster seems to be complete. We are now in the dog days of the NBA offseason, with training camp about 3 weeks away. It seems like this is one of the longest off seasons of all time, but today I will be detailing every addition and subtraction the Celtics made this off season. Along with that, I'll be giving my thoughts on if I think the Celtics improved or declined in these areas, some lineup predictions, and an overall prediction of where I think they will land next season. Of course, the first thing we have to talk about is the Marcus Smart trade. The Celtics sent Marcus Smart to the Memphis Grizzlies. They sent Danilo Gallinari and Mike Muscala to the Wizards in exchange for Kristaps Porzingis, the 25th overall pick in this past draft from the Grizzlies, and a future first-round pick, top 4 protected, which is the Warriors pick. As a lifelong Celtics fan, this trade hit me like a ton of bricks. There's just things that Marcus Smart does that you cannot replace. Of course, Kristaps Porzingis is a better NBA player than him, but Smart's been here for a long time, and he just has that Celtic thing about him, and it was tough seeing him go. But from a pure basketball and assets perspective, this is something that the Celtics could not pass up. Kristaps Porzingis has been an all-star in this league. He just came off his healthiest season and his best season of his career. They also got the 25th overall pick, which at the time they moved up 10 spots from 35. And they get a very interesting pick next year from the Warriors. I don't think the Warriors will be a bottom 4 team, so I think the Celtics will get this pick, but I also don't think the Warriors will be champions. So this pick could be in the teens or the early 20s. You just don't find 7'3" guys that can shoot the ball like this, take advantage of mismatches, and just shoot over NBA players no matter the size. He also is an elite rim protector and elite post player. I do expect his touches to go down, but I still think the efficiency in the post area should stay the same. There has been some recent concern about a plantar fasciitis injury that held Kristaps Porzingis out of the FIBA World Cup play, but in an interview, Brad Stevens says that he's not worried about this injury at all.
So if you manage it, if you treat it correctly, and then you ramp back up at the right rate, then it's got a lot less chance of being a lingering issue. So again, this is not like
his foot's
this
gonna
isn't
fall off. Yeah, right. Okay, good.
This isn't what I would call a significant injury that you're concerned about, big picture.
And if Brad's not worried, I'm not worried. And I think the Celtics improved their team on paper during this trade. Next on the list is the Grant Williams signing trade involving the Dallas Mavericks and the San Antonio Spurs. The Dallas Mavericks got Grant Williams in this signing trade. He signed a full-year $54 million deal. The Celtics got 3 second-round picks, one in 2024, 2025, and a 2030 second-round pick. The 2024 second-round pick is the San Antonio Spurs pick. Even though they got Wemby, I don't think they'll be a playoff team, so that pick could be in the same spot you got Jordan Walsh in that early 30 range. The Mavericks send Reggie Bullock and a 2030 first-round pick swap to the San Antonio Spurs for taking the cap space. Grant Williams was an important piece, but he is somebody that I think is replaceable. His progression and development went very well here. He came into the league as just this versatile hybrid defender, just a really active fire hydrant built type of guy. He missed his first 27 threes of his career. We never thought he would be a true 3-and-D guy, but then he lost some weight, started shooting 1,000 threes a day, and now he'll be a guy that teeters around 40% from 3 every season. I really like what the Mavericks have done this offseason with the guys they've surrounded Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving with. I'll be doing an offseason video on all 30 teams soon, so be on the lookout for that. $13 million a year was my sweet spot for if the Celtics were going to keep Grant Williams. That 12 to 13 range was something I thought that was feasible for the Celtics, but ultimately they let Grant Williams go in the signing trade. Next are all the free agent signings the Celtics made. Something I want to start with is the coaches. This is a really underrated part of this offseason. The Celtics got 2 top assistants to be next to second-year head coach Joe Mazzulla, who I thought didn't really have an opportunity to really put his imprint on his coaching staff. He got thrusted into a position after the Ime Udoka stuff happened. This was his first season as a head coach. He was in the second row of the benches while Ime was there. He wasn't even the top assistant. Now, some could see that as the Celtics not making the right decision at head coach. I do see the argument that the Celtics should have gone with a more experienced head coach, given that this team was already constructed to be a championship team. I do think the Celtics can win with Joe Mazzulla's philosophies, and he made some great strides in the latter half of the Miami Heat series against Eric Spoelstra. And just being a head coach and not having the time to put your own staff together, I think that was a huge loss for Joe Mazzulla. But this offseason, the Celtics bring in 2 top assistants, Charles Lee from the Milwaukee Bucks and Sam Cassell from the 76ers. Sam Cassell was a former Celtic, obviously a long-time NBA player, won a championship with the Celtics in 2008, and I really love them bringing in a lot more former players, and a guy like Sam Cassell could do wonders for Tatum and Brown as far as their mentality. Sam Cassell is a hard-nosed point guard, thinks the game at a different level, and everywhere he's been, he's left his imprint on it, so I really think that this will help. Charles Lee was another great assistant that was going all around the league for interviews for a head coaching position, but ultimately took this gig with the Celtics, a guy that Giannis loved in his time with Milwaukee, and I think if he can connect with our players the way he did with Giannis, that'll be a huge boost. Also, some other assistants, Phil Pressey was a point guard here for the Celtics too, so again, just getting guys who know the organization and who have been a part of this organization as a player, I feel like is really important. And they also made a make Tatum happy move. They signed Amir Jefferson, who used to play with Duke, is one of Tatum's best friends. Of course, that helps too to have guys that Tatum likes. Now, on to the players. Of course, the Celtics extended Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis. They signed Oshae, Brissett, Dalano, Banton, and Svi Mykhailiuk to the regular roster. They signed Neemias, Queta, and Scrubb to two-way contracts. The NBA changed the rule where teams can now have 3 two-way contracts. Now, the Jaylen Brown contract, I want people to understand that two things can be true at the same time. Being the highest paid player for Jaylen Brown does not fit him. Now, another thing that is true is that he is a star in this league. He was just second team All-NBA, whether you think he deserves it or not. At his best is a 27 points per game score on very, very good efficiency. He's more efficient than Jason Tatum. Now, there are things that at his age and at the level of player he is that he struggles with that he shouldn't. He is a flawed player. He's not an all-around great player. And that is a part of the reason why I don't think he should be the highest paid player in the NBA. But the Celtics were put in a tough position. It's either you don't pay him, which effectively means you have to trade him, or he's leaving. And the trade partners were not that good. It was the highest one was Damian Lillard, who this entire time is saying that he only wants to go to one team. If the Celtics had to choose between not signing him and signing him, I think signing him was the way to go, because you can see how this year goes. He can't be traded this season, so you can see how this season goes. If you want to trade him down the line, you can. Even though with that salary, it's going to be very hard to trade him. But ultimately, I do think the Celtics did what they needed to do. The Celtics also extended Kristaps Porzingis to a 2-year, $60 million deal. I think this is great value for someone of KP's stature. Again, if he can replicate his season he had with the Wizards last year, health and efficiency-wise, this will be a steal of a contract. Now, on to the guys they signed from other teams. Oshae Brissett was someone I liked 2 years ago in restricted free agency, but his three ball has took a hit these past few seasons. He's an energy guy. He's one of those guys that can be a rotational piece, but he's also one of those guys that you can tell if it's going to be his night or not. He's really erratic on the court sometimes, but his energy, again, just on any given night, it can be the right energy. And Coach Mazzulla has to do a good job of noticing which players are hot and which players are not on any given night. Dalano Banton is a 6'9" point guard. Yeah, it sounds crazy. I thought he was 6'7", but he is 6'9". Great positional size, good playmaking ability. He's a good slasher. His three-point shot is not quite there yet. He's shown some catch and shoot ability last year with Toronto and throughout his short career. He's just a good all-around point guard with great positional size, and if he's able to hit the three ball at a respectable rate, he can see a lot of minutes. We also signed Svi Mykhailiuk, who I look at as a polished Sam Hauser. Svi is more comfortable putting the ball on the floor than Sam Hauser is. I think Sam's a better defender, but when you look at Sam Hauser, you want him to have the skill set that Svi has. They're both phenomenal shooters. They're known for their shooting, but I think Svi has a little bit more sauce when it comes to creating off the dribble and passing wise too. Now on to the two-way contracts. Neemias Queta was just signed a couple days ago. I expect him and JD Davison to be connecting on a lot of lobs in the G League. He's a 7-footer. He's a great rim runner, a great finisher. He's a good shot blocker and rebounder. I've seen him play some games in the summer league. He is a presence down there in the paint. And with a 37-year-old Al Horford, you've seen guys like Kornet get some time last year. You've seen Blake have a couple games. And there could be some games where he comes in and he has some impact. He won't play a lot of games. He probably won't play at all. You just never know with the injuries in the NBA. And lastly, on to Jay Scrubb, whose last name is an oxymoron. This guy can really score the ball. I first seen it in JUCO. It was just one of those guys who didn't belong at that level. He was just better than everybody. I knew he would get to the NBA. I didn't know how successful he would be. We saw it at Summer League. This is how he got a two-way contract. He was poised, he's always under control, and he is a guy that can get a bucket when you need it. Now on to the draft. The Celtics made a lot of small moves in this process. They started at pick 35, traded up to 25 in the Kristaps Porzingis trade. They picked about 4 players, traded all of them, traded back a couple times, and in the end they ended up with a lot of future second-round picks and Jordan Walsh, who was a 38th overall pick in the NBA draft. If you could mold an NBA hybrid defender, Jordan Walsh's frame and athleticism would be the kind of guy you would look to build. He's an uber athletic 6'7" guy with arms so long they look fake sometimes, and he showed a lot in those few Summer League games he played. Coming into the draft, he was said to be a guy that was extremely raw and only known for his defense, not being able to contribute anything on offense outside of cuts and dunking the basketball. But in his few Summer League games, Jordan Walsh showed that he was much more than that. In the Summer League, Jordan Walsh averaged 18.3 points per game, 45% from the field, 37 from 3, 4 rebounds, and 1.3 steals. His energy was infectious out there, and he's actually a really good passer. He has instincts for the game. You can just tell as soon as you watch him play. He's much more than just an athlete and a defender. I think also he's a very intelligent guy, and he has no problem getting down with accepting the role, which is very important for a rookie. He's had a couple interviews of him talking about playing with Tatum and Brown and just being a guy that does the dirty work and whatever the Celtics need him to do. And just seeing that he has the ability to score off the dribble, hit spot up threes, be a secondary playmaker, just enhances his chance to play a lot of minutes in his rookie season. Speaking of minutes, here's my lineup prediction for day one, of course, barring injuries. Here's a starting 5: Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Kristaps Extension, and Robert Williams. There's been some talk on Celtics Twitter about whether Rob should start or whether Al should start. I think Rob should start, and it's not solely because I think Rob is just a more impactful player at this point in their careers. We've just been talking about preserving Al Horford since he's got back to the Celtics from the Kemba trade. Again, he's still a steady veteran. He's still good at what he does. But I think coming off the bench is the best way to preserve him for when we actually need him. Now, I do want to stress that it does not matter to me. Even though my preference is Rob, I see both sides, and it doesn't matter to me as long as Rob is getting more minutes. Al can start. And the idea of having 5 guys that can shoot in one lineup is something I would never be opposed to. And then when Rob's in there, you have 2 bigs that can pass with KP and Rob. You have 2 elite rim protectors in KP and Rob again. And even though Rob can't shoot, Rob is, again, a great passer, and he moves well without the ball, cutting, coming off of screens. And people don't realize that last year, Kristaps Porzingis played some 4 next to another center that couldn't shoot in Daniel Gafford. And based on the numbers, they were one of the best 2-man big lineups in the league. So I don't think Rob not being able to shoot will hinder anything. I just think Rob should start. But if Al starts and Rob closes most of the nights, and Rob is getting more minutes than Al, I really could care less who starts. Now, the bench is where things get tricky at. The Celtics have bolstered the end of their rotation with guys like Svi, Banton, and Oshae Brissett. But, of course, the fixtures on the bench, I think, should be Malcolm Brogdon and, of course, Al Horford. Brogdon's situation looks a little iffy because I don't know, even though he's a true professional, he's a vet, he stays cool. We still don't know how he feels about ultimately being traded, because he was traded to the Clippers before their thing with their trainers happened and all that. So we don't know how he feels about being traded. But Brogdon was just the 6th man of the year, and I think him and Al coming off the bench together, even if it's him and Rob, that 2 off the bench brings a lot to this team. Then you got a guy like Pritchard, who Brad Stevens is very excited about giving him this opportunity with Smart gone. Like, Pritchard has always deserved to play. He's a guy that can play in this league. He's a rotational piece. It's just that this team has had so many guards, and other than the time when Kemba was hurt in his rookie season, Payton Pritchard hasn't had consistent minutes. And I think if Pritchard comes in as an improved playmaker, given that Smart's not here, we know Pritchard can score. We know Pritchard can shoot. If he comes in here and protects the ball and becomes a better playmaker, then I think he can really, really get some good minutes in with this team. I think Hauser will start off this season with more minutes than Jordan Walsh. but I could easily see like Walsh and Hauser not fighting per se, but Joe Mazzulla having a tough time picking which one he wants to play at certain times. But for guys like Dalano, Banton, Svi, and Kornet, starters miss games all the time. There was a lot of games last year where the Celtics were missing 3 or 4 starters, and they stayed in games because they played with that next man up mentality. Svi, Kornet, Banton, again, these guys are going to get opportunities in some games to show up and give reasons for Joe Mazzulla to play them. Now, what I just said is true, but the NBA just passed a rule that might hinder it slightly. We don't know how teams will work around it yet, but the NBA passed a new rule where 2 stars cannot sit in the same game. One, I want to see if Kristaps Porzingis is in that mode, if he's like considered as one of those players. But we know for damn sure Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are in that list, right? So it says rest, right? So they can't just not have an injury and be out. I'm pretty sure teams will find a workaround. So let's just say if Tatum and Brown have a scheduled rest day against the Hornets or some shit, right? And the previous game, Jaylen Brown fell to the ground. The Celtics could say that Jaylen Brown got hurt on that play and just put him on the injury report and just say he's hurt. I don't know what the workaround is. I don't know how strict the NBA is gonna be with, you know, investigating if there are real injuries here, but I don't see that really being a huge deal for the Celtics. It could be more prevalent with teams like the Clippers, who like to rest Kawhi and Paul George to get them ready for the playoffs. Other than that, I don't see it being a big deal. But that is the end of the video. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe, and please, if you agree on something, if you disagree on something, or you just want to talk about the Celtics, please leave a comment. And it's Nick. Peace.